Well, Devil Hunters Chainsaw Man chapter 167 titled Super Smooch, or should it really be called the Shinji Hand? Yoru and Asa might actually become one, and believe it or not, does this chapter actually confirm that Nayata is in fact alive? But before we get to the craziness, I do want to tease that I am opening up a website finally for some merchandise. Check it out. I'll be selling playmats and mouse pads of some of my most popular thumbnails on my channel, along with many other more designs. I'll make a separate video in detail describing all that stuff later, but let's quickly talk about what happened in last week's chapter where Denji basically had a meltdown and he was blaming everything on his libido. After he pounds the ground with his fist, Yoru then takes control of Asa's body and suggests cutting off Denji's pecker if it would help resolve his issues. So we begin with chapter 167 with both of them going into the alleyway. Denji's still surprised by her offer to slice off his pecker. She asks him again if he wants to be rid of his sex drive or not. Being ordered to take off his pants, Denji freaks out and pushes Yoru's knife out of her hand. And of course, this is now where Yoru responds by grabbing her hand, sticking it inside of Denji's pants. But all this actually serves a purpose, believe it or not, because in the act of doing this has awoken a memory in Yoru's subconscious. And then she remembers the kiss that she gave Denji back in his apartment. At this point in time, this is where Yoru gives Denji a confused kiss. And then, well, finally, they make out. Maybe not in the nice or most romantic of ways, but it happens nonetheless. And it gets passionate, it gets a little steamy. And all the while this is happening, Yoru still has her hands inside of Denji's pants. And during this encounter, Denji, well, he climaxes. And after he climaxes, Asa manages to regain control of her body. Now, before we talk about the whole crazy Shinji hand, there's a lot of sensitivity around that stuff. I'm just gonna say Denji has been a victim of this stuff. We saw it happen earlier with Fumiko in the movie theater where that was totally not okay. I'm not saying what Yoru did to Denji here was okay either, but Denji also really wasn't fighting back. But to be fair, Denji has been going through a lot of confusing emotions as of late, and this wasn't Asa doing what she did to Denji, it was Yoru. But then we've seen in these recent chapters how Yoru and Asa has been very fluid in transforming into one another and not fighting back. So that we will talk about in a second. But look, the deed has happened nevertheless. Is this going to traumatize and victimize both of these characters to some degree? Yes. You know, I'm curious to see what you guys would think about the whole scenario. But let's actually talk about two interesting revelations. Of course, shout out to content creator Sufferance, who's really good with these Chainsaw Man analysis, way more than I can, because I'm actually going to cherry pick what he said in a tweet right here. And essentially, he says that Asa and War are actually becoming one. The scary idea War may absorb human hosts over time and use their name as identities because she can't separate them. They become her and they become Yoru. They are War. And of course, this could be some crazy foreshadowing that we got way back in the beginning of Chainsaw Man Part 2 when Yoru gets into the body of Asa. She says right here, if it serves my quest to kill Chainsaw Man, I'll swallow everything you say. Is the classification of what Yoru and Asa has become different than what a fiend is in Chainsaw Man? What's a fiend in Chainsaw Man? Well, a fiend is a devil that has taken over the dead corpse of a human with their own characteristics like power with the horns, or the violence fiend with the multiple eyes that he has. But this is slightly different. Why is that? Well, Asa did die in the beginning of Chainsaw Man Part 2, but Yoru brought her back to life, and they basically shared the same brain, right? So we've seen over the course of Chainsaw Man Part 2 that when either one is emotionally strong tied to some type of feeling, the other is going to feel it. So we saw that Asa has some strong feelings for Chainsaw Man. So Yoru, a bit confused, is also realizing, wait, I want to kill Chainsaw Man, but now I also kind of like him at the same time. And we've seen many other instances where this is kind of sprinkled, but when we jump into chapter 167, now that there is a strong emotional tie, which will link into Nayata, and I promise we'll get to her, Yoru remembers the kiss that she gave to Denji back at his apartment, and I'm pretty sure she still has strong feelings to eliminate Chainsaw Man so she can be back to her, purest, strongest form. But with the emotions taking over, and maybe this is why Asa didn't really do anything up until the very end, now we see the interesting dynamic that many people have kind of put two and two together for Asa's and Denji's character. They both have to unite at some point to face off against the Death Devil, but this is also conflicting with the agenda that Yoru wants to defeat Chainsaw Man so she can go back to her original form. But what if Yoru doesn't necessarily have a pure form and she's more so like this parasitic host? I mean, granted, we did see Yoru as like this owl in the beginning of Chainsaw Man Part 2, but the very last panel of this chapter, when Yoru transforms into Asa, she still has the spiral-like eyes, but the scar is gone. So does this mean Asa is losing part of herself into becoming Yoru, which then also sparks the idea, and it's kind of messed up, but Yoru is actually merging into Asa and they are becoming one entity? Which, if that's the case, now I really feel bad for Asa's character. But then again, they've also had their ups and downs as well, so now it's like they both get to live inside of one body. Look, I don't know, there's just many crazy things here, but this is all to say, look at the very last panel. Asa has definitely regained control because the scars are gone, but the spiral-like eyes are still there. So what the hell does that mean? Now, what does this talk about Naita being alive, DJ Miles? Well, the Chainsaw Man community is at it again. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up this tweet. Shout out to Chainsaw Man Zero, where he says, the condition for breaking through control isn't just death. One of the central points in part 1 was Angel and Power breaking free of her control with the help of intimate familiar bonds. This moment of intimacy shattered Naita's memory erasure. So what is this tweet basically saying? Remember how Angel was under the control of Makima in part 1, but then when he really recalled what happened to that crazy massacre that Makima has put Angel under, it was such a strong emotional bond that broke the control of Makima. We also see this happen with Power, and now when you look at 167, the strong emotional tie of Yoru kissing Asa broke free the control that Naita had onto Yoru. Hypothetically speaking, two things could have happened. Maybe Naita did die and that also broke the shackles that Yoru had, and this is why she remembered kissing Denji, or if I'm looking at it from the context of this chapter, no, it's just that the strong emotional tie that Yoru and Asa has towards Denji broke free of this constraint that Naita's spell had onto the War Devil. And if we look at it from that perspective, then that means that Naita is still somehow alive in Chainsaw Man Part 2, which I'm sure must be a huge relief for the Naita fans. I know I'm happy that she's alive, and come on, let's be real, I still think it would have been a bit anticlimactic if they off-screened her. But then again, we've seen some characters also die off-screen as well, right? Oops, sorry. But how ironic for Asa to say just a few chapters ago, if there's anything I can do, tell me, I'll help with anything. And well, he definitely helped your boy out. And considering what happened in last week's chapter where Denji was blaming his libido for everything, and of course it goes way deeper than just that surface level Fujimoto was implying with literally it being just his pecker, there's no doubt in my mind now that in chapter 168 and beyond, that whatever post-nut clarity Denji has and the dynamics of Asa and Yoru going forward with Denji is certainly going to change, and this is the defining chapter, for better and for worse. But we'll go ahead and talk about more about this in the live discussion, which you can go ahead and click on this video right here. Take care.